people aren't going to be willing to spend $18,000 or whatever it is on a classic flap because it's no longer really going to be a monetary investment or anything, and it's not going to be anything that you can pass down and then think, oh, you know, if you come into financial trouble you can sell it, because it might not be that easy. And Chanel, by suing what goes around comes around, and other, you know, whatever pre-loved websites or small companies selling these Chanel bags, it is gonna nip them in the butt, you know, later down the line, I think, anyway. Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Jess. Thank you so much for clicking on my video today. I wanted to talk about designer pre-loved shopping and how big designer houses, Louis Vuitton, Chanel, and Hermes, can benefit from having the pre-loved market exist. Seems like a lot of these designer houses don't love the pre-loved market. If you think about, for example, Hermes, they prohibit people from reselling their very desirable bags. Like, for example, if you get caught selling your fresh from boutique Birkin 25 on the resale market, they may just block you from being able to buy any more fancy leather goods in the future. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because in a way, like, Hermes can kind of sell their things to whoever they want, and if they don't want to sell something to you, they don't have to. There's no law against that. It does prohibit people from, you know, buying things and then reselling them for profit and having people who really love the brand miss out on something. However, with the pre-loved market existing, it does create hype behind products. And, you know, because things can be sold for more than what they're retail for, it does, in people's minds, make them think that they are good investments and that they have value. My friend, for example, her mum gave her a Rolex when she, turned 18 or something, and she gave her that Rolex thinking that, you know, if you ever get into financial trouble, you can always sell your Rolex and it will always be worth something. And I really think that a lot of people now have this same mindset towards handbags. They buy them, they love them, they say they're investments. They're not really, but they do have value. And if you ever come into financial trouble, you can cash those bags in and be sure that you'll get back, you know, maybe a few $1,000s, whether it's a, you know, a classic flap, a Birkin, a Kelly, even something like, for all I know, a Pochette Matisse, right? So people do see bags as things that you can cash in, like jewelry, like watches. And so there needs to be a pre-loved market for that possibility to happen. And if there was no pre-loved market, and if you were not allowed to resell your designer goods, then it would, in a way, make people value these items less. And perhaps companies like Chanel, Hermes, and Louis Vuitton would not be able to sell their products for as high as they are because they are no longer resellable. Now, when it comes to Chanel, I did recently watch Super Dacobs' video about the topic of them suing What Goes Around Comes Around, which is a pre-loved website who sells, you know, vintage Chanel, Hermes, Louis Vuitton, all the top brands. And Chanel are suing them because they issue authenticity certificates when you buy a bag from What Goes Around and Comes Around. And What Goes Around Comes Around, they don't really have the means to issue these authenticity certificates, Chanel argues, because they are not Chanel and they cannot possibly authenticate because they do not have, like, the Chanel system. They don't have the thing where you can type in the number and check, or they don't have the expertise of Chanel. So they shouldn't be allowed to be issuing these authenticity certificates. But, you know, and I'll link Super Dacobs' video below, and he goes into a lot more detail about this. A lot of us rely on authenticity certificates when we're purchasing pre-loved, and in a way I understand where Chanel is coming from, because I suppose how can one really truly authenticate a bag unless they come from that company? How can they have the power to do that? We as consumers put a lot of trust into these authenticators. You know, you have multiple platforms that authenticate just through photos alone, and we pay good money to get authenticity certificates, so we have that peace of mind that we've bought something authentic from the pre-loved market. Even, I suppose, you know, eBay have an authentication program. Vestiaire Collective have their in-house authentication. And we as consumers just assume that these authenticators are correct. But one cannot be completely sure sometimes unless you buy it directly from the boutique. So if Chanel is going to, I suppose, come for more of these authenticators and say they're not allowed to issue authentication certificates, then if these businesses who do authenticate will not exist anymore, it's going to really deter people from shopping on the pre-loved market as well. It's just going to be a complete nightmare if people will not be able to trust pre-loved websites like what goes around and comes around, like maybe eBay or Vestiaire or whatever platform, consignment stores, because consignment stores in Australia are actually pretty new. Like they have been around, but they haven't become as popular as they are now. For like probably in the last 5 to 10 years, they've really started to become more popular. There's been a few more consignment stores pop up and people starting to make their own consignment businesses, as a side hustle. And these businesses rely on companies that authenticate, like Entropy, like Real Authentication, or Legit Grails. They all rely on these companies, and if these companies are, in trouble, if Chanel decides to come for them because they're issuing certificates, well, it's going to be very hard for consignment stores as well to have these certificates to back up their products that they're selling. And this could become really complicated in the future if it becomes more of an issue. Now, I'm not saying that people who authenticate are 100% correct and you should do your due diligence when shopping pre-loved. I think you should do your own research. You should really understand what authentic bag looks like, and you shouldn't just rely on one opinion. I think you should get quite a few opinions. But if it becomes very difficult to be able to get those opinions and get different, access to authentication websites, because it becomes, Chanel comes for them, it's really going to be hard to shop pre-loved, right? And if the pre-loved market becomes difficult to navigate, it's going to make people trust, I suppose, buying a bag pre-loved a lot less, and thus people will be less likely to buy things pre-loved because they can't get an authenticity certificate. For Chanel, I think this could greatly impact on their sales because, well, a lot of you guys might disagree with me, but think about it. A lot of people buy Chanel bags because they have it in their mind that they can pass it down to their daughter and it will always be of value. But it cannot be of value if you can no longer sell it, if it no longer is resellable, basically. You will not be able to resell your bag if you don't have a means of authentication. And even if you have a receipt with your Chanel bag, receipts can be faked, serial numbers can be faked, and you do need a bit of an expert eye to authenticate these things and to be able to sell it on to somebody else. And Chanel, although they don't want people to issue authentication certificates, Chanel themselves will not authenticate your bag. If you go to Chanel and say, I bought this vintage bag, can you authenticate it for me? They will not do that. And that tells me that they do not like the idea of the pre-loved market and selling your bags on. But this is, I think, going to impact on their business if they make it more difficult for people to shop on the pre-loved market. And the pre-loved market is probably one of the big reasons why the prices have got so high. I mean, think about the Louis Vuitton mini pochette. Back in the day, 2017, it was 400 Australian dollars. And then I'm sure Louis Vuitton watched the pre-loved market. I'm sure that they watch, the noobs, the general public, us small potatoes, because they constantly get ideas from us. I mean, think about the toiletry on chain, the mini pochette on chain. I mean, they didn't come up with that idea themselves. They got it from what their customers are doing. And they also see that their customers are reselling the mini pochette at very high prices. It was $400, and then over only a few years, it managed to become over $1,000, which is insane. And it's because there was a lot of hype around this little mini pochette. I mean, you could collect it, you could get the different Christmas animations, and it became one of those really hyped items that Louis Vuitton realized they could sell for a lot, because on these pre-loved platforms, they were selling for $1,000. So they made it $1,000. And I don't really think that if the pre-love market didn't exist, I don't think the prices would be as high as they are now, because people wouldn't be valuing as highly as they are. So there needs to be a pre-love market for these things to keep their value, because otherwise, if you're not able to sell it, if you're not able to authenticate it, then these things have no value, because there's nobody who is going to trust buying from you when you have so many super fakes as well. And so I really think that the future of luxury and the pre-love market is kind of like going down, because if you think about it, the prices are now so insane in these boutiques. So people do go to the pre-love market because they want another option, right? To get a deal, or they might be, you know, the cost of living is going up now. So a lot of people are selling on their bags and trying to cash in their bags. But if that becomes more difficult, and if bags become unsellable, well, there's going to be less appeal into buying into these designer brands, and people aren't going to be willing to spend $18,000 or whatever it is on a classic flat, because it's no longer really going to be a monetary investment or anything, and it's not going to be anything that you can pass down and then think, oh, you know, if you come into financial trouble you can sell it, because it might not be that easy. And Chanel, by suing what goes around comes around, and other, you know, whatever pre-loved websites or small companies selling these Chanel bags, it is gonna nip them in the butt, you know, later down the line, I think, anyway. So anyways, I just wanted to talk about that today, and how it's in these brands' best interest to have a pre-love market. As much as they seem like they don't like the pre-love market, I do think that it gives their brands value, just like anything collectible. And yeah, I would love to know your thoughts on this topic as well. I just had to blab that out today. And watch Super Dacobs' video as well, because he has some strong opinions about the pre-love market as well, and like the Chanel suing what goes around comes around topic. And yes, thanks for watching my video today. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you guys on my next one. Bye!